I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about the Cleric Sum. This class is one of the original 3 classes that were in original Dungeons & Dragons. It was primarily played by humans throughout the entirety of the game, though when it came out, it was actually only playable by humans. They gave the elves the access later to be able to go ahead and trade their magic user side for the cleric side. This led to some interesting multi-class situations with the elves, as they also were able to pick up thieves, and then they were able to be thief clerics. They could be magic user fighter thief, or they could be cleric fighter thief. So there were some alternatives. There's also some rules actually in the very original Core 3 books that talks about the fact that you cannot be both a magic user and a cleric at the same time. This was a principle they held from the very beginning, because I feel like they felt that much magic on one character would be too much, no matter how slow the progress was. Most likely would be my thoughts. But in this video, I'm going to specifically talk just about the cleric. I'm going to talk about their spells in a different video, as that would be too much to cover in one of these. I also have other videos coming out with arcane spells or magic user spells. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into this. So since elves can be clerics once Greyhawk book comes out, and I have elves cast lyrical spells. I actually have lyrical spells being both arcane and divine. Divine and arcane are sort of a modern terminology of something that was used back in the day. And I feel like that lyrical magic crosses both those boundaries. I'm going to do a specific video talking about elven magic. So I'm going to hold off on talking about that in this video as well. That's also my home game, not necessarily core rules. Clerics tend to be nearly as martial, especially at first level, as a fighter. They have the same hits basically to hit. They can only use maces, which is both a good weapon and a very limiting factor of what they can do. They can start with plate mail if they want. They can use a shield. All these type of things, just like a fighter. So for the most part, they're very similar in that they don't even have spells yet. So they have turn undead, but they don't have spells. Turning undead is a very powerful ability, specifically against undead. There are different levels. I'll have a little thing scroll by so you can see it here. A T stands for turning. This means that the undead runs away from them and flees. It doesn't hang around, this type of stuff. The D means that they are destroyed when they're turned. There is no quantity or how often or how many times a cleric can try and turn a group of undead or undead in general, or if they can try and turn something that's higher level than them. The way we played it at my table is that you can turn once per group. If you have a horde of zombies run in, you try and turn undead, and that's all you have in front of you is zombies, and you're good. And then a horde of skeletons comes in through another door. You can turn those. And then if another door opens and it's got skeletons and zombies in it, you could still turn that third group, because that's a whole different group. The species or the type of undead doesn't necessarily matter. It's the fact that it's a new group that has not witnessed your divine power yet. It allows you to be able to turn undead as they come into the picture, basically. And they have to see you for it to work. So this makes sense in my eyes. As far as turning something far greater than you, I personally feel like it gives a great narrative merit, and I allow it. I talked already about the fact that clerics can basically only use maces. I feel like this is a great rule that establishes that they are not fighters, that they are going to be different than fighters. Fighters will always be fighters and will never be clerics, so they shouldn't be as martial as a fighter. There are some alternatives that I allow. Both a new weapon in the game that's not actually utilized. But also a new weapon that clerics aren't necessarily given is the maul. A maul is basically a mace that's two-handed. I have mauls do a d8 damage. I have them count as weapon class 8. That is faster than a two-handed sword, which means that in the first round of combat, if a person with a maul and a person with a two-handed sword runs into each other, the two-handed sword will get to go first. On the second round, though, I have the maul being a little bit faster. The reality is the two-handed sword probably should always be faster. This is probably a limitation of weapon class and how it's interpreted, more so than finding the perfect match or weapon class of a weapon. What a maul also means at weapon class 8 is it probably won't have 2 attacks around. That's pretty significant. And it also increases the range of things they can parry. They cannot actually parry some heavier things. I think that's probably about where it should be. If weapon class 7 didn't have the ability to get 2 attacks around, I could see that happening. Where a maul is really good is you're charging something, 2 attacks around is not really a possibility. You need to do a little extra damage versus a d6. Those type of things. You want to be able to parry something that a weapon class 3 cannot. It opens that up a little bit. It's not a hill I die on as far as whether you allow a maul or not. It's more of a narration type of thing, a story-driven thing. There's no great magical artifacts that are mauls. A maul is considered to be fairly much like a farmer or a carnival type of weapon versus a high class. Let's make sure we have our maul artifact, that I don't really have those. Another weapon I allow clerics to use is a sling, and that's just because I want every class to be able to have ranged weapons. It changes the dynamics on the battlefield, means that people aren't stuck doing absolutely nothing in the 5-foot wide hallway, or they're not forced to charge something that will just absolutely kill them. It allows lower level characters to travel with higher level characters without as much risk to them. And I think in a game that's pretty high risk, that's very important. Clerics don't start with spells. As I said earlier, they do get turn undead from the very beginning, but they have to literally make 2nd level to be able to get spells. This means they have to make 6th level to get 3rd level spells. There's a lot to that just by itself. They do, however, start with potentially having contacts with the church. From a roleplay perspective, this is a big thing and very useful within a campaign, and I think it's a very valuable thing. At 2nd level, though, they do get divine spells, and they start out at 1st level. Just like in the magic user, there are certain spells that are going to be more useful than others. Heal spells are very powerful. They are not heal spells of modern D&D, though. Heal spells in original Dungeons & Dragons take a turn to cast. A turn is 10 minutes. This is something you do in downtime. This is something you do while the thief is over there looking for a secret door. This type of stuff. You're checking the door or the chest for traps. The cleric casts basically a ritual of cure light wounds. This is basically what they get for several levels, and this is what they have. They were not really healing functionaries, but healing was so slow in the original Dungeons & Dragons. This was pretty much a game changer. So they had some detect spells that were pretty useful back then. Detect magic, detect evil, that type of stuff. Those spells would allow you to interact with roleplay situations or to know what the rewards were, if any of these were good, bad, that type of stuff. So another good spell they have is called Protection from Evil. So Protection from Evil puts a hedge of protection around the caster. It serves as a sort of like a type of armor. That is important if you're trying to stack certain things up, I guess. More so in other editions of the game than others. But it gives you +1 to all save throws. It gives -1 for evil opponents to attack you. This spell has no cumulative effect with magic armor and rings, although it will continue to enchant to keep out enchanted monsters. So it doesn't tell you it keeps out enchanted monsters, but literally anything enchanted, like if it's a summoned creature or creature from a different plane of existence, they can't touch you while you have this, though you can do things to them. The magic user gets 6 turns of this. The cleric gets 12. This is a common theme I found actually with divine spells, is it seems that they last longer, or they are more powerful, that they do more with the same spell, usually at the same level too. You can snake charm, which is extremely narrow, has some biblical overtones to it, but could be very powerful, as snakes often do poison, and poison is lethal. So yeah, Speak with Animals is both a communication spell and a charm, basically. Any creature that is affected by the Speak with Evil won't attack you or anyone else in the party, as it's listed literally in the rules of the spell. But you have some locate spells, like for locate objects. You have more remove curses and remove disease. You have prayer, which is like a higher level version of bless, except that instead of targeting the PCs, it targets the enemies, and it hits a 2-inch square, which is 20-foot square. It has a 3-inch range, which is 30 feet, so it's fairly close, but basically you do a prayer or like a curse type of thing on someone, and it lowers the save throw of the enemy by 1, 2, or 3, or whatever, depending on what level you are. Most of the time it's going to be by 1. So you're starting to run into some more offensive type of spells that are good for clerics. It has a Speak with Dead. I'll get into that when I talk specifically about that type of spell. The Continual Light I'm going to make mention of here, just because it has such a distinction between this and the Magic User side. In the Magic User side, it says that it is not equivalent to full daylight. In the Divine size, it says it is equivalent to full daylight. That to me says not necessarily that it's going to cause undead to burst into flames because a vampire or a shadow walked out in front of it, but it might make a shadow retreat from the light and hide in its shadow in some shadows, and it might make a vampire be uncomfortable in it, making it obvious that it's a vampire. But what it would do, in my opinion, is it would give creatures that suffer a -1 while being in full daylight that -1. So things like goblins and other races like that have these negatives, they would be affected by this. So not only is it a light spell that lasts forever and could be cast on marbles and you could roll it down a hallway, but it also now gives goblins that much less of a chance to hit you, which I feel is a very multi-tiered powerful spell for being level 3, in my opinion. I'm going to be talking a lot more about clerical spells in future videos. I've said this a couple times, so just look for that coming out. And I said videos in plural because I'm going to have a different tier, low, medium, high, and I'm going to be doing shorts on each one of the videos, so that will be coming out as well. But let's get into something a little darker. Let's talk about the anti-cleric. The anti-cleric is a cleric that has turned evil or is evil. According to the rules, it says that they no longer have the ability to turn dead. In my opinion, it fits with the logic of the class and how you see books wrote and culture of things, is that they would have some ability to control undead, kind of like a necromancer, but from a dark source. I think that really is dependent upon the referee at the table and how it's used. I could see this as being very cool and lots of flavor, and certainly fill out your bad guys more rounded. So I said, all right, but the 3 core books talk about humans being the only class that could be a cleric. Well, supplement 1 changes that, and now you can have elves and half elves be that. The difference between an elf and a half elf, frankly, is that the half elf tends to follow more of the human side of things and has higher, more martial levels than that of the elf, while suffering a little bit at the height or the level of the magic using side. So cleric wouldn't be quite as high, but the fighter could be higher. Dwarves and halflings still can't use clerics. I have them as NPCs. I think if you're going to allow clerics and halflings to be able to do this, I think that what you need to do is remake the whole class or whole race. They're just too powerful. They have too much ability. Raising the humans up to meet them is a thing, but now you're adding a lot to the game. You're basically playing a whole new game. In my opinion, if you wanted to do this, I would allow a dwarf with human-like abilities. They lose their night vision. They lose their detect secret doors. They lose all these things that dwarves are known for to be a cleric. And with their sacrifice be unlimited, just like a human. So they are essentially a human, but they are wrapped in a dwarven skin. They are reskinned, retemplated, I guess you could say, into a human that looks like a dwarf. And if someone really wants to play a dwarf that way and be a cleric, I don't have a problem with it. We just have to manage what other things they do. I'd consider allowing a dwarven thrower being held in the hands of a dwarf, but I don't know if I would even allow that. That would all come down to what the party is kind of feeling. As far as hit point potential goes, I kind of see it as they are not as high of a hit point in the end game as they are in the low game. In the earlier levels, sub 8th level, they are up there in the top half with hit point potential. Once you get past 8th level, their D6 doesn't matter as much, and they go to a half hit point per level. So a thief really could potentially catch up to them, being unlimited in levels, being a faster leveling progression. I think eventually actually could almost bypass a cleric in hit points, which I think is pretty crazy, personally. But there is a big benefit that clerics get at 8th level, which I think is a part of the reason why they have this diminishing return on their hit points the way they are. They can build a church. The church helps them, the religion helps them build a better church. They get followers that work for them for free, essentially, ties and all that type of stuff, and really bring a dynamic to the game that I think is rare. Okay, guys, this is Editor Zone real quick. I'm going to talk about fighting capability. I'm also fighting a bit of a bug, as you can tell by my voice, maybe. But let's get into this real quickly about where they compare to other things. So we know that at 4th level, a fighter becomes a hero. That doesn't actually happen until 6th level with a cleric. So they're a little bit delayed on that. So starting off, they're basically the same, but they do progress a little slower. If you look at the fighting capabilities, they count as a man plus 1, just like that. 2 men, and they go 3 men plus 1. Where really the fighter starts off as a man plus 1 and then goes up to 4th level, 4 men or a hero relatively quickly. They enter the superhero or lord range, as you may have heard me call it earlier. A little bit faster than they do hero. They get there at 9th level. They're actually considered a superhero -1, which means that they use the superhero chart for like the fantasy table and for the mass combat table, but they're at -1 to 1 of their attacks. Looking at the higher levels, all the way up to level 20, they progress much slower than a fighter. They get to superhero +1 by like 17th level, and that's basically it. They do continue to gain spells, but their spells seem to cap at 8th level, or 8 spells per level, which is a significant thing, I think. Anyways, guys, if you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments down below. If you think of something I haven't thought of already, I'll give you credit when I put the video out. I hope you guys like these videos. Give me a like. It's sort of like a little tip jar. It gets the video out to more people. If you feel like other people need to see this video, feel free to share it. Thank you for watching this far, and I appreciate you guys. Keep rolling those dice. Bye.